Hey, everybody, Dr. Rob Silverman here. I'm with my esteemed colleague, co-lead clinical investigator, Dr. Kirk Gair. We're going to be talking about everything GVL. Dr. Gair, I'm going to call you Kirk. Let's
That's
keep this
perfect.
fun.
Sounds good. That
What do
sounds
you got?
good.
What's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Especially with the way the GVL is changing so many things in healthcare and people's lives. I'm excited to share this stuff because I've loved these lasers for 20 years, and this just takes it up to a whole nother level. I know you and I, when we're doing the clinical trials, we're excited about what we're seeing doing that. And it's just mind boggling of the changes we're seeing.
I remember multiple times that we spoke to each other and said, dude, like,
Mhm.
are they not going to pass this because everybody's getting an outcome that's out of control, that's so much
Yeah,
elevated from the previous ones that we did? And remember,
right.
the
It's crazy.
standard bearer that we had when we talk about the studies is an Erchonia laser, which
Right.
crushes every other
Exactly.
laser in the market, in our opinion.
Exactly. I actually almost feel a little bad when I'm comparing it to like the Accelerator or something, because Accelerate's a great laser. It's a great laser, but I mean, this one is just like a whole other level. It's like the top of the line Lexus, Bentley, Rolls, whatever. You just get a whole different experience with it.
I think sometimes when we make the comparisons between other lasers, and we won't belabor the point, it's like a Volkswagen to my favorite, the Aston Martin. But
Mhm.
we've got to move on. Let's dig in.
Yeah.
How'd you get into laser? In a
Yeah.
quick manner. What did it do for you?
So laser really, I had my eye on laser for a while. Like a lot of docs, I'd been seeing stuff in some of the trade publications for a few years after I graduated school, but I was like, I don't have the money to get into that this time. So I was doing a lot of workers comp, which was pretty good at the time. But then Governor Schwarzenegger, he got elected with the help of our California Chiropractic Association and promised to do a bunch of stuff for us. And then as soon as he gets in there, he terminates us. You're no longer part of workers comp. Yeah, how you like that? And we go from making a good income to it to where it was like capped at $60 a visit and a hard cap of like 24 visits on there. So I thought, you know what, I got to do something different. And I really didn't like treating injured workers because they just didn't have the same kind of motivation. I wanted to work more with sports. And so at that time, that's when Dr. Jeff Spencer was working with Lance Armstrong. So I saw his stuff and I thought, if he's helping Lance do all the legal stuff to do his winning. I got to learn what he's doing, and so I went to his seminar and I went to Dr. Murphy's seminar. And when I went to Murphy's, they had a computerized range of motion and muscle testing apparatus that screened us all when we came in. There was like 120 of us doctors there, and they did computerized range of motion and muscle testing for the neck and for the upper extremity, lasered us for a few minutes, and then retested us. And I saw changes in range of motion and muscle strength like that in just a few minutes. I thought there's clear objective, like if I was doing workers' comp, those are your gold standard measurements for making an improvement with a patient. So I thought, if I can do that this fast with a laser, what can I do with athletes changing their range of motion and their strength? So I got into doing the lasers, and it transformed everything, because I went from, having to like think, where's my next patient coming from, to being like, can I handle all these patients that are coming in, and just a steady stream of referrals. And then just, as we'll talk about, the changing of lives, just, people who were, one girl who was going to lose a leg because she had complex regional pain syndrome, and Children's Hospital wanted to cut it off. She comes to me with that like Princess Leia line, help me, Obi-Wan, you're my last and only hope. And I got the lasers on her, and in 3 weeks, it completely resolved her problem to where she's back to being normal again with just laser and chiropractic adjustments. And the list goes on of all these different things that it's transformed. So it's transformed my practice, made it into a waiting list practice. I don't worry about where my next patient's coming from. My biggest thing is trying to squeeze them all in. And,
That's
and how about
tough
you? How'd you
problem.
get into it?
Real simple, very similar in the seminars. It was Dr. Dan Murphy, Dr. Jerome Maruka, Jeff Spencer.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I actually did it in a more selfish reason, because
Yeah.
I suffer, as you guys all know, from congenital torticollis. And after about 10 years of practice, I am breaking down. My neck is fused. I can't get a diversified adjustment. Back's hurting and everything. And I need something. And a friend of mine comes by and he says, yeah, I just bought this laser. And he literally magic wanded me. And I was like, wow, my pain's gone away, and, my
Yeah.
range of motion's increased. I'm still inhibited, but it truly was an epiphany. There's a few epiphanies in my life, one of which was when I met my first chiropractor and wanted to go to chiropractic school. We all have that story. Yeah. Mark Twain says the two most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you knew why. one of those whys was
Yeah,
definitely
good.
having the application of the laser. Now
Yeah.
I started with myself, my friends, my family, and always my wife, and the results were unbelievable. So then I added it to my practice, and without question, adding laser therapy has revolutionized my practice, both in a
Yeah.
clinical outcome practice, in a practice management, and also with financial retribution.
Absolutely.
Like you, I'm not worried about where my next patient is. And then really when, the advancements of the FX405 and the GVL came out,
Right.
now we're able to use them in my functional medicine dome. And I
Exactly. Right.
believe that
Yeah.
laser is the left hand, the right hand is functional medicine for me.
Yeah.
Together they make the health handshake.
I agree.
So like you, we've got some great testimonies. We kept it really
Yeah.
short because there's a limitation of time. But I
Right.
do want to ask you, I have never heard
Yeah.
a better explanation of how the laser lights the body up than your
Oh,
explanation.
sure.
Share it with everybody.
Sure. And this comes from, I used to teach junior high in a rough neighborhood outside of LA. So I try to think about, if I'm trying to explain this to my junior high school students, how's this going to work? So I would tell them when patients come in and they're not familiar with lasers, I'll tell them this is the easiest way to understand it. Here's my hand. Let's pretend my hand is a plant's leaf. And in that leaf, there are light receptors, we're called photoreceptors, that if the laser's sunlight, I'll shine the laser on my hand. I said, these photoreceptors will absorb the energy from sunlight, and then they'll turn it into food. And that's photosynthesis. I said, now that food doesn't just stay in the leaf. It goes throughout the whole plant to make the plant healthy and to grow. Now, if you go out in sunshine and you get sunlight on your arm, you're going to make melanin right here, but you're also going to make vitamin D, which is going to go all the way to your bones to make your bones stronger. And it's going to go systemically too to support your immune system and dampen inflammation. When we get the lasers on you, it's going to do something similar. You're not going to make food or vitamin D, but when we get the laser on you here, you're going to make things like stem cells to help you make new healthy tissue. So whether it's a damaged bone, a ligament, a muscle, a blood vessel, whatever it is, the laser is going to help that to repair. You're also going to decrease inflammation, improve blood flow, and increase ATP for more energy for everything you do. If it's a sports performance, you're going to perform better. If it's just doing your normal work, you're going to feel more energy throughout the day. That's the basic explanation for the laser. And people get it. It's like 30 seconds. You don't have to, people don't need to see all the studies right then. They just need to get a basic concept of how is this light making a change on you.
That's so important because, you really spoke about a key in practice management, the patient understanding the value and how it works. It works through photochemical reactions,
Exactly.
electromagnetic transfer of energy. It's great. And what you alluded to, and I know I've heard you talk about it many times, is it's not just local, it's systemic and it's global.
Systemic.
The body's all interconnected. It's a system.
Exactly.
So, we've used a lot of different metaphors, one of which is putting food dye in like a pail of water and moving it around, and it goes through the whole body. So now that they've got a basic idea of what we did, I'm going to throw up some slides and let's really get involved about the and let's go into great detail. One day I need to get this tech thing down where I am more savvy,
where you're smooth. Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. Well, I'm on the last slide. That's okay. Here we go. And we're going to talk about the study.
And I got an easy one too for doctors when they're getting into, say, EVL and GVL differences for explaining it to a patient. And the way I explain this to the patient when they're looking at it, they're like, what's the difference between like the green, the violet, the red, infrared? I tell them it's like if you were to go and lie down under a UV tanning bed versus going in an infrared sauna, you're going to get a completely different result. The UV tanning bed, you're going to get the vitamin D production, you're going to get a suntan, all those different things. Infrared sauna, you're going to get all the things like supporting detoxification, totally different. You could take that sauna and ramp up the heat as high as you want. You will never trigger vitamin D production because it doesn't have the right energy. And that's another one where people kind of get it with that.
Right. You've got to give him those real life metaphors. So the GVL, we were both co-lead clinical investigators. And again, we kept talking to each other and just saying, can you believe what this is doing? And I think I heard you say it was kind of like we had to keep it quiet. The Martians are in my backyard. I want to show everybody a picture, but I got to wait till the right time.
Wasn't it terrible, man? It was so terrible having to wait all that time to get the FDA to approve it before we could actually talk about it. And then we had the whole thing where, doctors may not know this, but Erchonia only uses the highest quality diodes. That's why, they are long lasting, and that's why they are the price point that they are, because you have the highest quality diodes that are out there, and there just weren't many quality green diodes being made. So they had to wait to get enough of those diodes to be able to produce this stuff. So we had to delay it even another several months before we could talk about this baby.
Yeah, I turned it on because I want to mitochondria my brain a little bit. Let me
Absolutely.
get you now. Let me get you a little
All
bit.
right. Sounds good.
So you were talking about the line generated beam from the diodes.
Yeah,
It's a special,
right.
it's very unique to the Erchonia laser. And, it's unfortunate that we don't talk about that enough.
Yeah.
It's really not comparing apples to apples. It's in many
Mm-hmm.
instances, it's comparing apples to the sky blue.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So GVL, our goal was to look at neck and shoulder pain and FDA clearance. Overview was we did 13 spots in 13 minutes, some insights. Some were on skin, some were not. I know we'll address that in the FAQ section.
Right.
So I'll break it down, and I'll let it'd be great if you go through the slide, and I'll go through the next slide. So
Okay, sounds good.
the red and violet, I did the FDA clearance on the red and violet. So if anybody ever has any questions, reach out to compare and contrast, and green and violet. So go for it.
Yeah, this is an awesome side because it breaks it down, and we have another one too that has the LED on there. So it's important to understand that all these outcomes were compared to an LED, because there's a lot of companies out there that are saying LED is just as good as laser, and it's not. If you compare them in head-to-head, photon per photon, identical settings, and LED does not do the same thing. Some people are going to try to tell you, oh, well, it's just because you need to jump up the dosage more. If you got to jump up a dosage more to try to come close, it is not the same thing. That means that a photon of an LED does not match a photon of a true laser, and a photon of green and violet has different energy than, say, red on there. And we look at this, if we go down to the bottom, one of the biggest ones I think there is looking at the change in range of motion, because that's a purely objective measurement there. You look at 14% change in range of motion with red only. That's a great outcome for one 13-minute treatment, which is like 6.5 minutes per side. With the red and violet, it was 29%, and with the green and violet, it's 32%. With the LED, I think it was only 2%, Rob, if I remember correctly. It was 2%.
It was 2.
Yeah.
So 2, not to interrupt you, but 2 to 30%.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, as a control. And when you looked at the placebo, the change between placebo and not placebo, remember, you can get up to 30% of placebo. So it was like 27 point something.
Yeah.
The laser improved in one visit about a 50% difference versus quality placebo.
Right. Exactly. So that's a huge, huge difference there. And I think what's important to understand too is when you look at the improvement post study at the box just above it, people kept getting better after the laser wasn't even on them anymore, to where 48 hours later, they continued to improve, 43% for the red, 50%, 65% for the green and violet. That's unheard of, because with a lot of the treatments, let's say you stick a TENS unit or something on there, it's temporary. You got like a 6 or 8 hour window and then it's gone. Same thing with the LED. You didn't see any long-term improvement. As soon as it's gone, it starts to bounce back. With the laser, it's the opposite, because we're actually creating long-term healing on there. And that's really huge. And if you go up to look at the subjects meeting the study success criteria, was huge on there. We look at 8 out of 10 patients met at least that greater than 30% pain reduction. Red did good too, 65%. Red and violet, 75%. I mean, these are better than what medications have to show on their efficacy. And we blew them out of the water on here. And these are, you see the months of how long people were in pain. We got 5 years to like 8 years that people were having pain, and having these huge changes was amazing. I had one guy who was a Division I college football player in the 80s. He had range of motion stuck here for like 40 years. We do the one session and it goes up to here. And he's like, are you kidding me? He's like, how did this change that much with you? I didn't even feel the laser on me. He was blown away.
It's funny. My patient pool, I kind of did something interesting. I made sure no one had seen a chiropractor before. So I didn't want them to have a predilection of positive or negative. Right. Everybody had pain over a duration of time, and it wasn't a few months. It was well beyond the criteria. Everybody had to have a chronic condition of 5 years or more.
Exactly.
Now, out of the 22 patients in my office that I applied the laser to, 18 of them became patients after that. I had never seen these people before.
Yeah.
So, we speak about everything. There's truth and power in the numbers. So the next one is, and the reason I wanted to save this one was, it's 98% of the subjects recorded they were satisfied with the treatment outcome. I had the one who didn't say he was satisfied, but let me tell you what he did. He's a 26-year-old guy who plays in the Fireman Cop Football League. Now,
Yeah.
Kirk, you were a Division I football player. This guy
Division
got
two. Yeah,
lasered.
Division two.
Sorry, Division
Yeah.
II,
Yeah.
and that's Pisani. Well, that's all good.
Pisani was, yeah,
Pisani,
exactly. I'm not on his
absolutely.
level. He's NFL too. So
He's NFL, and kudos to him. But
right.
this guy went and played the football game that night. Came in the
Okay.
next day to tell me, I don't know if it was, I felt that well. I said, wait a minute, you played football? I hope it was like touch. He goes, no. Was it flag? No, it was football. I'm the quarterback, and 2 offensive linemen weren't there. So if everybody doesn't know, he basically got hit on every play. So I wanted to justify the 98%. However, 100% of subjects recorded pain reduction at 24 hours post-treatment. Anybody's interested in the article, Kirk and I have been published and indexed in PubMed, which was a really tough task. Only 12% of what was submitted got published. We're very happy. Speak to the rep associated with the webinar, and we will get you copies of the article. So,
and if I can mention something there too, Rob, I was talking with Travis. For those of you who don't know, Travis kind of heads up our research department along with Steve Shakes. Is he told me, as we were getting this thing through peer review, we had a previous one we put it through that got through all the reviewers, but one rejected it simply because he didn't believe green and violet lasers could do this. It didn't matter the results. He actually was so biased on his opinion that only red or infrared and higher power could work that he completely ignored the data on there and rejected it from peer review on that. So that's just wild to me. It shows you how there's this bias in the laser world where people will believe things that aren't actually true and will keep promoting them on there despite all this quality research that is being done.
Well, you just opened Pandora's box. So let's talk about Erchonia research. Let's be real. They have a laser here in the PVRL, and they said, we want to try the laser here. All of them are great. They're all building on each other. I mean, at a certain point, when you're the heavyweight champ, why do you go up and weight against the super heavyweight champ if there's such a thing? Yet they did. So their research is stellar, headed by Steve Shanks. Travis right there doing a great job. So these are some of testimonials that are from your Facebook group. So I'd love you to roll through these.
Sure. This is just and this is the biggest problem I had when you asked me, hey, can you get some testimonials? I'm like, okay, I got to narrow this down because there are so many on there. For those of you who don't know, doctors, I have a group on Facebook, and so does Dr. Rob, where we help doctors out on there. We both have 1,300. We're competing to see who gets 1,400 first on there, of members in there. But this is just people sharing stuff about what they got with their laser. So Hamilton Wetzel up there talked about how the laser's key thing is that it helped him grow his practice. It's an integral model, part of his business model. Key point, it paid for himself many, many times over, and he's been able to provide a much broader and excellent level of care for his clients. And that's the key thing. Like you said, Dr. Rob, you can merge this with functional medicine, functional neurology. It just makes you that much better. Also, it's going to take a load off your body, because when I was 34, before I got these lasers, I was feeling beaten up just from 5 years of practice. And now at 53, I don't feel that way anymore because the lasers take a load off myself. Plus, I treat myself with the lasers too. So now some off the mainstream stuff here, we got doctors talking about helping with anxiety, with emotional kind of things, that people, as they're using the laser, they're feeling more joyful, less anxious, they have more energy, their brain's working better, sharper and clearer, a lot more focused. And even people, when they're using only a couple of days, this one guy, Adrian Thane down there, said he had bronchitis for a week. He used it on the chest settings and immediate relief right after having that. And these are the things that we see all the time. Patients will see it all the time. Just amazing differences. Again, you can get great results with the other lasers, but the GVL with that higher energy per photon, you just make some breakthroughs with people, to where that's why I do, as we're going to mention briefly, some stacking. I like to stack my GVL with my FX. So I'm getting all 3 wavelengths on these patients so we can hit all aspects of the electron transport chain to get the biggest impact for patients.
So now that you mentioned that, I'm not stealing any thunder. I'm sharing the lightning.
I'm passing the ball to you.
There we go.
I'm giving you the layup. Yep.
Right. I got it in my office right here. My wife says, get smarter, think sensibly. Get right under here. And what Dr. Gair's talking about stacking, it's a very interesting thing. You can stack 2 handhelds. So I've got the EVRL and the GVL, and/or the GVL and the Accelerate. We're going to go through reasons why momentarily, why we would stack. You can also do what I call 1+1 and stack the lasers together to get the complete wavelengths that you need to stimulate the mitochondria. So trying to stay in order, I know we're going to get to that. And I know you're chomping at the bit, and so am I, man. We can talk about complexes. We'll be here for 6
Right.
hours.
Oh my God. Yeah, exactly.
People are going to want to know, why should I add? I've got a laser. Hey, Dr. Gair, Dr. Rob, I've got a laser. I've got an accelerator. I've got the OPL5. I've got an EVRL.
Yeah.
I'll let you start with this. Why would you add the GVL to your practice armamentarium?
So here's the reason why. If we look at a lot of the current research out there, let's say whether it's long COVID or it's aging or it's degeneration or anything, the big buzzword right now is mitochondrial dysfunction. And if you look at what pharmaceuticals are getting into, they're trying to look at medications to treat mitochondrial dysfunction, because we know that's a huge part of a lot of things that's going wrong with people in society today. So take a look at your patient base and things that can disrupt the electron transport chain, where we're looking at 4 complexes, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Things that can disrupt these steps include Monsanto's glyphosate. How many of your patients are exposed to that on a regular basis with the foods they're eating? Breads, rices, pastas, cereals, etc. Then we look at common medications that your patients may be taking before they're coming into your office, like NSAIDs, aspirins, Tylenol. You look at statins, other blood pressure medications, antidepressants, you got antibiotics. All these things can disrupt the electron transport chain. And if you're looking at just having the red, you're only going to impact complex 4, which is the end stage for making energy, for making ATP and for mitochondrial function. But you can have these dysfunctions at complexes 1, 2, and 3 that are not being addressed when you only have the red. And that's like water flowing through a hose. It can get kinked up here at complex 1 or 2 or 3, and that's going to decrease the output at complex 4. That's why in the past people used to say, oh, if your patients are taking NSAIDs, you're not going to get a very good result with your red or with your infrared lasers. You add in the green and the violet, you can knock that stuff out of the park to where you can straighten those things out. When we look at neurological disorders or autism or other kinds of dysfunctions, a lot of times complex 1, 2, or 3 is a major component of what's going on with them. Or there's types of osteoarthritis that complex 1 or 2 is a big problem, or even adipose tissue can be complex 1, 2, or 3. So that's why you're missing this complete armament to treat the whole flow of electrons on there to get a whole bigger response in the body's tissues, especially with the way these mitochondrial dysfunctions are a huge problem for people right now.
Well, I'm going to cheat a little. I didn't mean to, but
go right ahead.
Here we go. So let's exactly what you were talking about the mitochondria, the idea of electron volts. So a couple of big takeaways about the electron volts, and then we'll get back to the complex. Great stuff. Number one, you need 1.7 electron volts to catapult an electron from one valence level to another. So that starts at 650. The lower you go down, the more electromagnetic transfer of energy. So at 650, let's call it, it's 1.9. You need 1.7. If you go to about 520 or 510, which is in the green realm, the wavelength, you have 2.4 electron volts. And you get all the way down to the 405, 400, which is in the EVRL and the GVL, you've got 3.1. But to your point, which I always hear you talking about, when somebody's got over 700 and 720, they don't have enough energy to catapult. So they're not doing anything except heating the area. And we both know that heating the air is not something that we want to do on a regular basis. It's typically deleterious, especially in acute condition, a nerve, and a brain. So the idea of electromagnetic transfer of energy is critical. Hold on.
And along this point is, I consider that breaking point there at, say, that 650, when you go above the energy of 1.7 versus below, like in the infrared lasers work more under a Newtonian physics model, where it's large particles or large structures, and it's mechanical and it's thermal. And so you're working on big particles, or not even particles, but big structures. So Newtonian physics. Whereas when we get in the higher energy realm, we're now into quantum physics, Einstein stuff, to where we're working on the smallest particle. We're working on electrons. When you look at the infrared lasers, and I'm not knocking them, they just work differently. They don't work on the electrons like this. You don't trigger a jump in the electron transport chain because it doesn't have enough energy to make it pop up. And when we use the high energy photons here, when you make that electron pop up, then you actually create biophotons, where your own tissue starts producing its own laser-like impulses and actually talks to the other cells through these laser-like impulses. And if you go into PubMed and you look at the current research on the brain being like a quantum computer, you'll see that the lasers actually trigger communication throughout the body in what's called a qubit, which a qubit is a unit of data that your body uses to communicate through light impulses. Sounds like total Star Trek here, like I'm being Captain Kirk, but that's what the research talks about. Is nobody else in the laser world is talking about that except us. They're still dealing with things in a 20th century model where we're going into the future of a completely different paradigm.
Star Trek is with a great analogy. And just to piggyback on what you said before, the electron transport chain, the critical element, as you really detailed, was the 405 stimulates complex 1 and 2. Complex 3 is stimulated by the green at 520 and complex 4 is 635. That's why we stack lasers to get the full complex. Now, additionally, this is something that I threw it in there. I work, the question was posed to you and I wanted to piggyback. Why add the GVL to practice? Again, I do a lot of functional medicine. When you look at the ability to add the violet and the green, look at the viruses and bacteria. New article just came out literally yesterday that fungus, yeast, candida actually causes 2 different ways Alzheimer's. Now, we all know it comes from the gut to the brain. So with that said, you need the GVL. So this is why I've added it to my practice. It allows for what we call photobiomimics, the changing in the microbiome in the gut. As a matter of fact, the changing in the gut has been so robust. Studies have talked about a 400 times change in the diversity of the microbiome. So
that's awesome.
This is one of your favorite slides. I know you really like to detail it, so I want to throw the ball back to you. We're hitting 3-pointers right now.
Sure. Yeah, I absolutely love this one because, again, you hear these myths in the laser world of, I need this laser to be the deepest possible penetrating to actually trigger some repair. Time after time, going back to the Russians in the 60s and 70s, they show that the visible lasers they work differently because as you get it on, like they would laser over the carotid artery and the subclavian and get it to go to deep structures to make changes. And this really shows you where they actually took Erchonia lasers here. This is at the University of Illinois in Chicago, and they took Erchonia lasers and used it in a renal fibrosis model, and they showed that the laser does affect the kidneys on there, and it does it again through this photochemical kind of reaction similar to the sun on your skin causing vitamin D going everywhere. And this showed some of the unique action of each of the laser wavelengths. So it showed that with the red, you got increased general mitochondrial activity, proliferative activity, and production of interleukin-10, which is really important when we look at controlling the immune system. That's like your master regulator of the cytokines. And this is the guy that tells everybody to calm down and chill out and not go too crazy. So you can actually help with people who have autoimmunity to kind of regulate that and kind of calm things down. With the 405, you got the reduction of the apoptotic cells on fibrous tissues and improve breakdown of scar tissue. Do that at high electron voltage, because when the 405 nanometer hits it, you cause these electrons to jump. You're actually kind of rearranging molecular structures and creating these electron reactions and enzymatic cascades. And even just as you have that great analogy in the of ping pong balls in a stadium, you get that one photon that triggers these hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of reactions there. And that's what you get with breaking down the scar tissue. And then the green, you see this reduction of transformer growth factor beta and the biggest stimulation of stem cells. So that again shows you that each one has great superpowers. This is like, the Hall of Justice, where you're combining all the superheroes together, like a Marvel Comics movie where you get all the superheroes together so they can utilize their strengths to overcome the bad guys in the body. And that's what I get so excited about, using the different wavelengths.
Fabulous. Great. There's, again, a ton to unpack there. But one of the things that I'm asked about, I'll dig in a little and then I'll toss it to you, is the question is, what does the GVL do differently than the other handhelds? Essentially, why do I add it? And for me, the reason you add it is a couple of easy things. Number one, I had added the violet light, the EVRL, because I wanted to do vagus nerve. We needed a little more energy.
Absolutely.
And that's great. And we were able to prove that through heart rate variability. Well, the EVRL is great for vagus nerve. The GVL is even more effective because it's the most energetic handheld laser that we have. But here's the secret sauce. The phrenic nerve, everything's about breathing now. And in the phrenic nerve, which of course it's time to use, The phrenic nerve is one breathing, C3, 4, 5 keeps the diaphragm
Ram
alive.
alive. Yep, I remember
So
that.
here we go. Phrenic nerve. You're going to take the phrenic nerve and come straight down, get around, go here. Hold your breath in, come back, come up very quickly. Bilaterally hit 3, 4, and 5, 3, 4, and 5. The EVRL is a great laser. The GVL enables me to get the phrenic nerve. And now, without question, breathing is hot, no pun intended, but more so, it gives you an addition that you didn't have before. Here's something else. The green light, stem cells. You love to talk about stem cells.
I do.
Stem cells in the gut. I'm all about the gut. Takes 4 to 5 days for stem cells to grow back. Epithelial cells in the gut, 5 to 7 days. You add this to your gut protocol, you're going to change your trajectory and outcome.
Yes,
and everybody knows that your gut is the epicenter of your health. 80% of immune cells are in your gut. And let's be real, more energy, faster outcomes on mitochondria. Mitochondria, hey, Kirk, let me ask you, what's the number one mitochondria organ in the body?
The number one mitochondrial organ in the body. You just stumped me on that one. You tell me on that one.
Okay, it's the brain, the one thing that I have that doesn't work well. Well, it's debatable. Okay. I'm sure if we get the functional neural docs, they'll agree with us. But so therefore, brain
that makes sense. Yeah.
And I'm setting you up. I'm teeing it up. I know you play some golf now.
Yeah, I mean, great stuff when we look at it. And now Dr. Barry loves talking about what you can do with these kind of lasers on the brain. And it's amazing. And this is where I was already kind of thinking about my patient, which some of you may have seen, River, the little boy who had drowned for 10 minutes. And when we got the lasers on him, he would spend 3 weeks of every month in the hospital. So this kind of speaks to you in gut health and overall immune health. So when we got the FX on his brain, and first was the EVRL, and then when we got the GVL, we started using the GVL on him, and he went from being 3 weeks of every month in the hospital to where he went 6 months without having to be in the hospital. And this was a kid who drowned for 10 minutes, who was severely, injured from this. And we started to see where he started to move spontaneously. His dad said he went from feeling like a rag doll to like a real boy, to where he can do different kind of movement things with him and other things where he has reactions. He still has, a long way to go, and we don't know how far he's going to go, but huge changes, even with a kid with an injury like that. And that again is because of the way you impact all these different kinds of activities in the brain with the green and the violet laser, and especially when you're talking about bugs in the gut crawling up into the brain, that's where I think it's super important getting that. And the light bulb for me came on, I think it was in 2017 when I was at the IAFNR, the International Association for Functional Neurology and Rehabilitation Conference, when my good buddy Dr. Karazian had me speak there on using lasers for brain injuries. And he was talking about, at that time, was kind of newer information about the bugs crawling up and triggering Parkinson's and all these other things. And that's when I talked to him and said, hey, we got these violet lasers that have been shown to be, it's FDA cleared against nail fungus, the bacteria that causes acne, etc. We know they work against viruses. I said, I'm thinking about using this on the brain to knock down these bugs when they get in there. And he's like, that's a phenomenal idea. That's like going to the next level of the future. So when you put these lasers on the brain, you're protecting these patients from their possibility of having dementia in the future. And, some people are going to be more likely to have it depending on their genes. Like if they got the APOE4 gene, which I think is an important test for people to get, because if your patients have that, they need to be a regular laser patient in your office for the rest of their lives, and so do their family members. So adding in those different wavelengths, that can really help to knock down the source, because if you don't do this with lasers, guess what? Pharmaceuticals are going to try to get at them, and they're going to try to get them on a drug to do this stuff, which is going to have a whole host of other side effects on there. So when you say, like you say, you got the right hand and left hand is laser and functional medicine, I'd say then the third hand is going to be functional neurology, and you add those three things together, and you don't have to be a diplomate in these things. They're just, you get it on the brain, and it's like, that's your diplomate in a box for you, kind of. We got one guy in my group, Brady Wyrick, talks about that because he's a functional neurodiplomate. And when he came and he's learning the lasers, he's like, holy crap, dude, this just made things so much easier for me. A lot of stuff that he said, I know how to run through and do the diagnosis functional neurology wise. I'm just going to stick the laser on it. It's going to do the magic there. And I know for you and your functional medicine stuff, you look at, there's a ton of supplements you can do to repair the gut or the blood-brain barrier, but you get the laser on there, that's going to help repair those barriers too.
Makes you look good. I always say that, C in chiropractic is for cheat. I will take credit for anything that enables you to get better. And the best cheat I've ever had, the crib sheet of health, is the laser.
It is.
So
it is.
I'm going to hit, we have a quick minute testimonial here.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Turn it on and let her take it away.
The new GVL laser by Erchonia Corporation. And we're actually just going to do kind of, since it's at the transition into not controller, we're just going to do a next setting here. Now you see how she feels. Ready to step down. What do you feel? Okay, we're gonna have, because you were saying you were lifting and pain, so we're gonna have you lift some dumbbells. I used to always give you pain, right? Incredible.
So we wanted to show you a video testimonial. Again, this is from docs. This isn't from us. This happens every day in my office. I know it happens every day in your office. So I know we're getting towards the end. So some of the questions that people ask me is, give me the 5 conditions that you would want to treat the GVL with first.
I mean, my favorite ones in my office, because I do a lot of sports stuff, is gonna be shoulders and knees. When it comes to 2 that I can just make mind-blowing changes in a patient really quickly, shoulders and knees. I love that. Anything brain related, let's say whether it's a patient who's been concussed, or I also like long COVID. I love having a long COVID patient come into my office, and I'll get the GVL on their brain, and then just do some different little cranial nerve stimulation on there, and we can see some huge changes. My other one is going to be, because again, I deal with athletes, performance enhancement. I just get the lasers on them and let the lasers do the magic of increasing their mitochondrial performance, and we see their sports performance just take off in a huge way. And then of course you got your chronic stuff of your low back and your neck, the easy stuff. But the stuff I like that's a little different would be those ones. Literally, if you come into my office, a lot of people think it's kind of weird, because I spend way more of my day on a shoulder or a knee than I do on the back. It's just, that's what comes into my office, because a lot of doctors of all specialties are not very good with knees and shoulders. And I salivate when one comes in. I don't care if it's someone who's been recommended a knee replacement, they've had a knee replacement, it's a fresh injury, whatever. I'm like, I'm going to do some mind blowing here. They're going to think this is some kind of Mr. Miyagi wax on, wax off kind of change with this. And those are my favorites, and what about you? What are your favorites to do?
For me, anything gut to brain, superhighway to health, include the vagus without question. Love the long COVID. I wrote a book, Immune Reboot. We talk about the laser in the book, how to deal with long COVID. And really long COVID, to piggyback and tie in what you talked about, long COVID's based on mitochondrial dysfunction. 80% of the people that have long COVID have mitochondrial dysfunction. Incidentally, the number 1 complaint in the doctor's office is fatigue, mitochondrial dysfunction. You want to get over the hump, the GVL. Central nervous system disorders, love them. And we're chiros, and I think sometimes we skip over it. Guys, if you're in a musculoskeletal practice, this is the thing to do. It's going to save you time. It's not going to take time in your appointment or in your treatment. It's going to save you time. And one of the big things about this versus other lasers that I think we should make as I transition into like frequently asked questions is very simply, your staff can press the button, whereas in other lasers, they can't. A doctor has to be present. So you have those options.
Yes,
point and shoot, movement. And by the way, it's easy. Kirk and I travel all the time. Here's my cell phone. I'm charging it. I mean, it's the same thing. So you can put it in. So let me ask you, give me a couple of the questions that docs ask you to help them over the hurdle just before we sign off on the webinar?
One of the things that docs ask me that comes up a lot, especially right now with the crazy economic times, is all right, I love the laser. I see what it can do, but how much do I need to make a day? Like, how do I sell this? How much do I need to make a day to make this profitable? If you break it down, it's like when they ask, how do you eat an elephant? Well, you eat it one bite at a time. If you break this down, if you're in the office 5 days a week, you only need to generate $19 a day to pay for a GVL. And if you can't generate $19 a day off of these kind of results, you need to go back and take some Tony Robbins courses, awaken that giant within, because there's a roadblock somewhere in there, because you literally stick this on people, you're going to change lives. They're going to be talking about it, doing their social media on there. So I think that's the biggest thing, is first getting over that fear that doctors have. It's like, okay, how do I talk about it to patients? You use my example of the plant and photosynthesis. People understand that, and then understand you only need to generate $19 a day to make this thing profitable. You're going to do way more than that. If you did 20 patients a day at $5 per patient, that's going to bring in 26 grand, more than pays for a GVL, and we charge more than that. I charge 45 to $100 for my laser session. So it's way, way beyond that. I think that's the big thing on there. That's a sticking point for doctors. The other one is they get too caught up, but you and I, we've had numerous discussions about this. They get too caught up in, well, what are the different frequencies? What frequencies do I need to use? What's the different frequencies for the GVL versus the EVL Accelerate? A pulse frequency is the pulse frequency. It's going to be basically the same. And you only need to use, I spend most of my day in one of 3 to 5 protocols. I'm either doing like Dr. Barry's basic brain protocol. I'll do like one of you guys' vagus nerve protocol settings, an acute injury and a chronic injury. Those are my 4 common go-to types of settings. So don't overcomplicate it. Don't get the paralysis of analysis. Get the laser on there. Remember, it's the wavelengths and the specific low level that we have that does a lot of the magic. So I'd say those are the 2 biggest sticking points I see with doctors. And what would you say? What are you seeing, Rob?
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on what you said. The $19 a day is a great amount. That's 2 Starbucks coffees a day. Or the way I look at it when you said it is, drink coffee at home. Don't drink 2 or 3 Starbucks. You'll be fine. It's very inexpensive. And, we talk about the finances, but if you don't do something different in your practice, doing the same thing every day and hoping it's going to grow, it just doesn't work that way. So that's not a lot of money. And I agree with you wholeheartedly on the frequency. Use the constant, which is the wavelength. We are wavelength driven company. We're a wavelength driven laser. And the third question is, and I'm sure you want to give a close. How does it go through close? Well, it's electromagnetic transfer of energy. There is some scatter, but with billions of photons, it gets in. Is it better on skin? Yes. But if it has to touch the skin, it's probably going to have to vibrate. And we all know from chiropractic school, things that vibrate like ultrasound typically have some sort of heat forming. And the third thing is the flexibility. When they say flexibility, they say, well, what do you mean by flexible? It's the ability to carry it, point and shoot it, put it in a stand, take it with you, and flexible for a varied amount of conditions. So I know we're getting close to the finish line. You got any parting shots?
Yeah, one thing I want to say on there is I did the math on, because I know we've talked about it's billions of photons that are coming out. I wanted to do the math to see how many photons actually come out of a GVL per second. So I went on the KM Lab site, which, this is where you can look at the energy and how many photons and stuff. When we look at the GVL, there are over 100 quadrillion photons per second that come out. So I'm saying again, 100 quadrillion photons per second. It's insane. And that's per second. Let's say that your clothing, and we know it doesn't block this much. What if the clothes block 90% of those photons? You're still getting 10 quadrillion photons per second that it's on there. And we look at the Stanford University research, it showed that they talked about how you don't need a lot of photons to make a change. You just need the right wavelength on there. And that one photon can trigger hundreds to thousands to tens of thousands of reactions. So when we look at that, let's say like the skull can block between say 90 and 98% of the photons. 2% of photons, that means you're getting 2 quadrillion photons per second on the head. How long do you leave a laser on there? So it becomes like, null and void on there. And if you look at the research done by Sergei Moskov, he's one of the Russian researchers, and he talked about how with the visible high energy wavelengths, you put it on the blood vessels and it goes everywhere. So that's why it becomes a moot point. You get it on the area, it's hitting some of the skin, it's getting absorbed, it's going throughout the body. Like you look at a medication, like let's say if a female is doing hormone therapy, they rub a cream on their body, on the lower part of the body, and does it just stay in that area? No, it goes throughout the whole body, affects even brain function. So I think that's an important concept that needs to be hammered into people's heads. If you're using a high-powered infrared device, yeah, you got to get it directly on the skin and directly over that area. For most of the devices, you have to do it that way. These just work different because these are Einstein's quantum physics based versus Newtonian model based. And I think that's an important point for doctors to understand, that when you talk about the high powered infrared lasers and the low powered but high energy visible lasers, they're completely different beasts. They work in a totally different way. And that's important to segregate those things.
Outstanding. The GVL has revolutionized my practice. The synergy of the violet and the green light has allowed me to optimize outcomes with patients like I've never done before. It has not taken the place of any other laser. It's been an adjuvant to all my other lasers. And now I have a moment where I have the mic. I want to thank Erchonia for doing a great job and always supporting chiropractic and research. And a little personal note, I finally got to work with you, and I hope everybody can hear that we can do this together. We are Batman and Robin, but we're not going to wear a mask.
Right, exactly. Absolutely. Great stuff when we team up.
Definitely. It's been my pleasure. Hope all is well. And thanks so much for your time, man. Great job.
Yeah. And hey, remind everybody, get in our groups too. Both of our groups. There's great stuff from there. You got Dr. Rob's Laser Mastermind group. People need to jump in there. My group, Dr. Gair's Laser Therapy Treatment and Marketing Secrets. These are great places to where too. If you're on the fence, ask the docs in our groups. They're going to tell you what their experiences are, because you can say that we're biased because we've been using Erchonia products for decades here. But there's a lot of doctors there that are brand new. They're talking about they just got their laser this week and they're already seeing a complete transformation in the practice. We also got doctors who were semi-retired or retired who have come out of retirement because they're so excited of doing things just in a different way. They love chiropractic, but their bodies are beaten up for doing it for 30, 40, 50 years. And they're coming out of retirement because they're seeing how they can help people in a different and unique way.
Outstanding. Join both our groups, ask the same question, get some different answers. You'll love it. But both answers will work. You know why? Because the concept between the two of us is the laser, and we both utilize the GVL. So I'm Dr. Rob Silverman, Dr. Kirk Gair. Thank you very much. Always yours in health.